What's your best "it's not what it looks like" story? I was walking along one night with my wife and we bumped hips accidentally. I bumped her again. She bumped me back harder and it escalated from there. For my final victory, I timed it just right to knock her into a lamppost so she fell over, laughing. Whoop whoop, a police car had come up behind us and only seen the killing blow. She instantly started laughing so hard at the absurdity of it that tears were streaming down her face and they grabbed me to stop me attacking her anymore. I had been going over to help her up. Honest officer, it took quite a while for her to stop laughing enough to explain. Longer still for them to believe us. In a similar vein to this, shortly after I moved to the UK, I went to Durham to spend a couple of days in the city and meet some old friends. One day we decided we'd do a bit of a walking tour and eat at some places along the way. Shit got a bit out of hand and we ended up gorging ourselves on some pretty good food over the course of the day. This culminated in me having to stop for a bit of a rest to let my stomach settle as we were walking back to our hotel. Now for those that don't know, Durham is built on a river, so I thought, you know what, monkey paw _ hand job, why don't you just lean here on the bridge railing and enjoy the view and sound of the water? My friends decided to sit together on a bench about 20 meters away, probably to talk about how much of a disgusting monster I'm when it comes to food. Sure enough, within about 5 minutes I hear that fateful whoop whoop as a police car pulls and the officer starts asking if I'm alright and if he can call anyone. I turn around like an idiot and try to explain that no, I'm not suicidal, I've just eating a shitload of food and needed a rest while walking back to the hotel. All the while my friends proceed to piss themselves laughing before coming in to explain that I just eat like a duck and I'm currently paying the price. Yeah, it's the easiest way to avoid anything bad. I don't care who you are. This was my thought process even though they were looking for someone who matched my description. They had copies of our student IDs. I hadn't done anything wrong. I was in a different building when it happened, video cameras as proof, and I had just called their dispatcher as building closing procedures. Just stay calm and listen to them. 99% are out to find people actually doing wrong, not innocent people for no reason. I had it happen once where I was suspected of stealing my neighbor's Xbox when I lived in a semi-shared dorm. Living area and bathroom shared between two people, individual bedrooms, camera stops at the main hallway, where you enter the shared space. I had spent the whole weekend in the room while he left for the weekend. Noise-canceling headphones meant I didn't hear when they kicked his door in, and it didn't leave damage that was visible when door was closed. Natural resting point of the door being fully closed. I found out this happened when campus PD came to me asking if I knew anything about it. I had a run-in with my campus police where they were convinced I had tried to lure a child away from a pee-wee football game they were hosting at the sports field. The description definitely matched me and I had been over by the field but obviously had done nothing of the sort. They put me in handcuffs, drove me over to the field and made me stand in front of the stadium where a crowd had gathered gawking. They talked to some of the people who apparently identified me as their culprit because they told me I was in serious trouble. I of course started bawling and desperately tried to explain I hadn't done anything as they told me I was under arrest for child enticement. I continued blubbering in the back seat of the cruiser for probably half an hour. I was working on an education degree at the time. This would ruin my career even if it wasn't true. Just having the allegations on record would be more than enough to torpedo any chance of getting a job as a teacher. After what seemed like hours and with no explanation, they drove me back to the student lounge I'd been at when they picked me up, told me they didn't have enough evidence to pursue charges right now, but they'd be watching me, and just let me out of the car and drove off. No apologies, no explanation, just dipped. I filed a formal complaint with the head of the security, dean of whatever, and he promised he'd look into it. Never heard anything about it ever again. quite possibly one of the most traumatic experiences of my early adulthood. Hopefully the victim would have remembered the person who did its face and told them it wasn't top. The bigger problem isn't the justice system for that, since most sexual assaults go completely unpunished by the justice system, since it's usually just the victim's word, and if there are any other witnesses they probably are closely connected to the person who actually did it, so they're not going to be willing to tell the truth. I know multiple people whose parents protected a more distant relative who assaulted them. The bigger worry is that it'll get reported and someone who has influence on your future won't be willing to accept that you didn't do it, innocent until proven guilty. Although a lot of people seem to forget that also goes for accusations that someone is falsely accused, trying to fuck up the victim's life is also wrong, and a lot more likely to be incorrect since false accusations are a lot rarer than actual assaults. I had a fender bender, so my car had small crunch on the front end. No big deal, I drove it like that for a while, but as a joke. This was in high school, 1972 or thereabouts. A friend called a hit and run describing my car exactly. Small town. Late at night I was headed home from my girlfriend's house, so it wasn't hard for the cops to find me. I was confused and said it was old damage, and they looked at it under flashlights and could see the rust on the damaged metal. They were kind of disappointed, and one of them said, "Your car matches the description exactly." Oddly, it wasn't till years later my friend owned up to it when I told the story to a different group that included him. I figured it was a coincidence, never realizing it was a practical joke that backfired. I was jogging once and going through the alleys near my home. I took a walking breaking because cardio is hard and was crossing a street between two alleyways. I saw an SUV turn onto the street in my peripheral, so I figured it was a good enough time to start jogging again. I jog into the alley and the SUV follows. I see another similar SUV pull into the other end of the alley in front of me. Suddenly I see police lights flash from the SUV behind me. I assume it was for the other vehicle, so I stepped aside between the two vehicles. Then the second SUV turns on lights, and within seconds I'm surrounded by at least 10 to 15 officers with either guns or tasers drawn on me, yelling at me to put my fucking hands up. I oblige and put my fucking hands up and am searched thoroughly while an officer screams 2 inches from my face, "Thought you were just gonna outrun us, bub." Turns out someone wearing the exact thing I was had just broken into a nearby home and assaulted/robbed a family. When they saw me look at their SUV and then run into the alley wearing the same thing as the suspect, they were sure they had their guy. I was able to talk them down after some time and show them text messages I had been sending during my run, and they also must not have matched the description close up. They let me go, and one cop apologized in the end and said, "We just wanted to give you some adrenaline for your run." I had something similar happen to me. I live in El Paso and happened to be working when the shooting at the Walmart happened. Illy mother worker at the mall nearby, and I was worried sick because it took me so long to get a hold of her. She was fine and I went home, got my family to go see her. What most people don't know is that authorities were looking for suspects for weeks after the shooting, and they were supposedly driving a red car. I just happened to be using my father's red car at the time, and despite being Mexican and black, I am very light-skinned. While I was visiting my mother, one of her neighbors called the cops and my dad had to explain to them who I was. Oh God, this reminds me of my own story. I had a good female friend in high school named Natalie. I had a big crush on her and we ended up dating later, but at the time she was with someone else. Anyways, she came to my house to work on a project after school one day before my mom came home. She finished up and then had a date with her BF at the time, much to my lovesick chagrin. So she needed to change. I told her she could change in my room. She did and then left without incident. I was chilling downstairs when my mom got home and went upstairs. I'd why she did it, but for some reason she decided to look at my room, and then I heard her say my full name. loudly and slowly, the way she only did when I was in serious trouble. Confused, I ran upstairs to find my mom holding a lacy, see-through, blue thong. Apparently, it fell out of Natalie's bag when she was changing. The worst part was there was no way I could convince my very angry traditionalist of a mom that I didn't have sex with her, when the reality was I very much wanted to do just that. I was way too encouraged to date girls growing up, when I'm old enough, and since it is important to note, I am straight, so it's not one of those types of stories. Also, I'm in college now, so my awkwardly worded sentence hopefully doesn't sound like I'm currently a middle schooler. And in high school, one friend thought I was gay because I never talked about relationships, and I've been asked a few times if I'm asexual. Harmful indeed. I don't talk about relationships or romantic interests, so people assume I simply am not attracted to anyone at all. I grew up pretty sheltered, and as I hit my mid-late teens, my mom became super religious and involved in the church, so there was never a ton of pressure from my family. I'm 28 now and have a good relationship with my mother, but shit was kinda dumb, especially since I worked full-time and paid my bills and rent at 19. I'm sorry your family is pressuring you so much, but from their point of view, they're excited to see you blossom into a man and bring a girl home. If you haven't, I'd suggest telling them how you feel about it and explain that their pressure is just making things harder for you. Things will all get better and easier with time. Friend smile. So sorry to hear about what you experienced, and I'm glad you're doing better nowadays. Also, thank you for your kind words. My parents aren't exactly the excited kind. They just think I'm a loser who can't talk to people. It is true I have social anxiety, but I do talk to people and have friends, and they just don't buy it. I also tend to hide my social life from them because whenever I try to say anything they demand to know what I talk to my friends about. Like I said, they pry a lot. For obvious reasons, teenage me talks and jokes about some stuff with friends that I'd rather keep inside my friend group and away from my parents, so sometimes they log on to my computer and read my chats, and a lot of the jokes, memes they saw made them start calling me various hurtful things. It's a terrible situation, but I do my best to ignore it and convince myself it's stupid to care about people I'm not even forced to see in the future. Fortunately though, I'm going to college in a city a few hours drive away from home very soon, so I won't have to bother with hiding stuff anymore. So I'm definitely going to try taking steps to socially expand myself in college now that I'm not going to see my parents anymore. Oh God, not high school. In high school, there was a new boy in our gym class and he was a year older, and pretty much all of the girls had a crush on him. He and my friend were kind of talking, so I never flirted with him. But one time we were playing flag football and he accidentally ran into me when we both went for the ball. He grabbed my waist and dipped and caught me like it was a romance movie in the 80s. And wouldn't you know it, that my friend walked in late to class that day and saw it happen. First thing, she didn't talk to me for 2 weeks. I have a slightly similar story. The house I grew up in had a finished basement, and of course it was the hangout spot for my friends and me, as well as a den of debauchery for my girlfriend. I was around 22 or so, and since my girlfriend worked with me, she would come over after work, hang out, and then either stay the night or leave if she had class in the morning. One day my dad asks me who left their light blue underwear on the bathroom floor. I immediately go into a panic and I'm trying my best to explain that my girlfriend was over last night, wanted to change clothes before going home, must have left her panties, so on and so forth. My girlfriend didn't stay the night and they knew that, so I go downstairs to look, and it was a pair of my boxer briefs that were on the bathroom floor. When I was like 19, I sometimes would go to my girlfriend's house, go play tennis or basketball, get really sweaty, and want a change of clothes after getting out of the pool. One day I did so and was loaned her else's sweatpants, These ended up fitting me really well and kind of became an inside joke between us after I took them over and wore them around her. One time my parents were out of town and I was home alone with the dog. This dog is adorable but very regimented. That is, I had to sleep in my parents' bed with him or else he wouldn't settle. So I'm wearing the Elsa pants cause they're comfy and I'm home alone, so who cares? Bed gets a little toasty, so I shed the sweatpants and move on with my life. Fast forward a few days to my parents coming home and my mom pulling me aside to talk about something she found next to the bed. I immediately start dying laughing and have to put the pants on in front of her to prove that I just wore them around sometimes and liked the fit. Still not entirely sure if she believed me, but I can go to my grave knowing that nothing happened in that bed. Expect a good night's sleep and some dog snuggles. Driving back to college from my grandma's house, holding my hand up to my ear to hear myself better as I practice for a choral performance a couple days from then. Cop pulls me over, is surprised to see that my phone is actually packed away in the back seat when he asks me to retrieve it. Asks me what the hell I was doing. And I get to awkwardly explain the thought process behind hearing yourself better when holding a hand to your ear. After a long stoic pause I panicked and couldn't think of anything else to say, so I went, "Just try it," and started singing on the side of a 2-lane highway in the middle of bumfuck nowhere. He let me off with a warning. I recently got a parking ticket in Boston for an expired parking meter. Car was a BMW with NY license plates. Was the last Saturday of the month and late in the day. We just checked into the hotel and I didn't want to pay $50 for parking, so I just parked it on the street and paid the meter for 2 hours using quarters and not through the app. I took a picture so I wouldn't forget the expiration time. The meter actually shows the date, the current time and the expiration time. Not 5 minutes later I ended up going back to the car because I forgot something. Lo and behold, I got a fucking ticket for $50. Exactly what I was trying to avoid paying. I felt targeted by the issuing officer. NY plates. Oh, they won't figure it out. Well, I fought the ticket online and submitted the picture as evidence. I got a letter in the mail saying the ticket doesn't have to be paid, but I am still guilty and really should pay the ticket. But if I have paid the ticket already, my money would be refunded. The letter also stated this is a one-time courtesy, but if I pay the meter again and get a ticket again, I will have to pay the ticket. No admission of guilt. Fucking pissed me off. Not necessarily. I got pulled over for speeding several years ago. I no longer speed because it's not worth the money spent on a ticket. A week or two later my truck was hesitating on the freeway, so I was giving it a little gas to try to figure out what it was. Right in front of a sheriff, got me doing 75 in a 65. I explained what I was doing, even showed him the check engine light that had just come on. And he seemed like he believed me, went back to his car and came back with a ticket anyhow. He said that he was going to give me a warning, but when he ran my license he saw that I had another warning recently and couldn't let it slide. Granted, he probably could have just let me go, but at least in my area, it is entered into some database. Oh, come on, man. Nabbing someone for being on their phone while driving is like shooting fish in a barrel. Did he really miss the barrel? The sheer number of people I see blatantly texting while weaving lanes without a blinker in rush hour traffic on a daily basis should be enough to keep half to force employed through the year, let alone the 20% that I see that don't even bother to look up from their phones as they cross through intersections. Guy playing with his beard, Commande. Honestly, it seems like when the excuse is just two or the cops decide there's no way that isn't true and decide to just let it go. One of my friends back in college got pulled over for speeding at 2:03 in the morning and explained to the cop that she had to get to the tide pools before the tide started coming in or else she wouldn't be able to find sea hares for her research project. All true, by the way. The cop was a bit confused but just let her off with a warning and told her to slow down. A coworker hit my vehicle, and rather than go through insurance, I gave him an option to pay in cash to avoid an insurance hit. A couple days later he was paying me in the parking lot at night shift workers, and the manager comes out of the office and heads to his car. Came over to see WTF was going on. Totally looked like a drug deal was going down. Lol.